Welcome in. I'm Liz Grace of Galactic Mythology, and I am so excited, very excited to introduce you to this weekend's Goddess Report, November 8th through November 11th. This weekend is set to be a spectacular show, no doubt. And the star of our show this weekend is Ceres, Miss Goddess of the Grain herself. As always, I start my goddess reports at the stroke of midnight on Friday, and they end at the stroke of midnight on Monday. Friday is known as Freya's Day and is linked to Venus. Moon Day, Monday, of course, is with the moon. And this is according to our Western zodiacal order. Furthermore, I am based in Portland, Oregon, and I report according to Pacific Standard Time. I use the equal house system when I am reporting on events, such as transits for the weekends, like the weekend ahead, November 8th through November 11th. Now, for me to even begin speaking on this weekend, I feel that I have to mention last weekend. Last weekend, November 1st through November 4th, was all about airing out the cosmic laundry and letting those emotions run wild. Well, this weekend feels like we're taking a deep dive into that emotional river. And folks, we're fully submerged now. So submerged that things might feel kind of normal. Whatever normal truly is. Let's just say we have become stable with the emotional currents of the river flowing from last weekend. Let's roll on into Ceres, who is poised to make an encounter with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. She entered within 10 degrees of an orb of Pluto sometime over last week, and by the end of the weekend, she advances another 2 degrees, making her about 8 degrees away from Pluto, the underworld. Now let's introduce Jupiter. Jupiter is in a tight inconjunct with Miss Ceres. Jupiter over there in Gemini. Yeah, there's some fascinating mythology intrigue going down between Ceres, Zeus, aka Jupiter, and Pluto, the underworld. Expect some serious, as above, so below dynamics to unfold. Meanwhile, Mars has strutted into Leo from Cancer. Proud as ever, he's currently flexing in the 1st degree. He's still locked in a stare down with Pluto over there in Capricorn. Mars in Leo is starting to feel a little bit too big for his britches. This weekend, he plans to roll on and begin to inch away from that opposition with Pluto. Mars appears to be getting bored. He's ready to stir some things up and go look for some new cosmic playmates. He's also drifting further from the dreamy Neptune trine I mentioned last weekend. With this in mind, expect Mars's attention of focus to be upon the material rather than the mystical. This weekend, the veil has thickened, pulling us back into our bodies, into the here and now. The emotional rivers are still flowing, but we're starting to ground ourselves a bit more, coming back to Earth. Now let's talk about Vesta along with the South Node, the Lunar South Node. These two kick off the weekend at the stroke of midnight on November 8th, hanging out within the 5th degree of Libra. Last weekend, I touched on Vesta's energy, enriching the metaphysical and spiritual vibes that were already swirling around. This weekend, she's even closer to the South Node. And what exactly is brewing between these two? Well, you'll have to stay tuned. I'll brief you on the mechanics of the lunar nodes first. The lunar nodes, aka the north and south nodes of the moon, aren't planets. They're points where the moon's orbit intersects the sun's path. This is explaining eclipses from an astronomical point of view. But in astrology, the nodes take on a much deeper meaning. Connected to karma, soul growth, And yes, past lives. One thing that makes the lunar nodes extra karmic is their natural retrograde motion. They don't move forward like most planets. They travel backward through the zodiac. Right now, we're in the Aries Libra axis, but soon they'll shift into Virgo Pisces. The nodes spend about 18 months in each sign, but that's not what I want to emphasize here. What's important here is their retrograde motion, and here's why. This weekend, on November 8th at about 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the nodes of the moon will station direct. Yep, for about 3 days, the lunar nodes plan to stop their retrograde march backwards and move forward among the stars. They do plan to turn around, though, and go right back to retrograde status on November 12th around 6 a.m. So this whole weekend, we are in for forward motion karmically, I suppose. I mean, what really does it all mean? Well, we're not talking reverse karma exactly, more like a karmic pause. It appears that some karmic fruits have ripened, and this extended visit from the South Node in Libra with Vesta means things are getting extra juicy. On an esoteric level, the node's natural tendency to move backwards has long been linked to karma. Retrograde motion itself resonates with themes of the past, of revisiting and reliving. This retrograde energy helps us connect the dots in evolutionary astrology, showing us how past lives and old patterns weave through our natal charts. Retrograde, rooted in RE, has a natural kinship with the word relatives, relationships, and all things cyclical. But I digress. The thick Neptune and Pisces energy from last weekend might still have a bit of a fog over me here. Let's move on to the interpretations for the weekend. November 8th through Monday, the 11th. Ceres, or more traditionally, Demeter, is the mother of Persephone. That part is pretty well known. But here's a question for you. How many of you know who Persephone's father is? It's not hard to guess. It's Zeus, the thunder god of Olympus. Let's be real here. Zeus has a lot of children. Persephone, though, is one of the most famous of the children. And she's most well known mainly because of Hades, however. Hades, who abducted her into the underworld and made Persephone his queen. So yes, Persephone is the queen of the underworld, the daughter of Ceres, the nurturer, and also the daughter of Zeus from Olympus. Many people connect the story of Persephone and Ceres to the birth of the 4 seasons on the planet Earth. Beyond that, these two goddesses are closely tied to pre-industrial times. To put it in a historical context, I'm talking about the age prior and leading into the early Bronze Age of our human timeline. To explain it further, Ceres and Persephone embody the concept of a golden age, a time before the so-called fall of humanity, giving us some serious Garden of Eden vibes. And this energy really ties into something I've touched on earlier, what I call the karmic pause. By the way, how many of you know the word bucolic? I've been digging into it recently because I've noticed a lot of horror films, TV shows, and haunted houses draw on what we now think of as bucolic imagery. The word bucolic has ancient roots in Mycenaean Greece. It comes from the noun bukolos, which literally translates to cowherd or herdsman in English. Today, according to the Oxford Dictionary, bucolic is an adjective used to describe the pleasant aspects of the countryside and country life. It became popular in the 17th century, right around the start of the Industrial Revolution, when people started longing for the simpler, rural life before machines dominated everything. It represents a time when humans lived with nature rather than just among it. To add another layer of fascination to the word bucolic, something that I like to call a living word. Its meaning can adapt depending on the era. If it had existed in ancient Rome, bucolic, it would have referred to the Golden Era, pre-Iron Age. In our modern world, especially influenced by Hollywood, bucolic tends to evoke images from the late 1940s through the 1950s. Think of shows like American Horror Story, specifically the Freak Show season. That season was based in 1952. Furthermore, that season takes place in a small fictional town. And want to know what that town's name is? Jupiter. A small fictional town in Florida. Yes, Jupiter, Florida. How fitting. These Hollywood writers must know their mythology. The whole season revolves around one of the last remaining freak shows in the United States. Check it out if you haven't. I don't know what it's streaming on, but the Freak Show season of American Horror Story is my favorite. Carrying on. Sometimes bucolic even stretches into the 1980s, before Y2K and the new millennium. The essence of bucolic takes us back to a time when humanity felt more connected to nature, a time of dignity and simplicity. With all this in mind, expect a wave of deja vu. Sweet memories from the past may come alive, and memories from simpler, parallel realities might cross into our present. The irony of bucolic is that it implies innocence, and yet it hints at fear. Innocence belongs to a polarity, of course, and its opposite being corruption. Horror writers, like Stephen King, use this contrast to great effect. For example, in It, the story moves between the 1950s and the 1980s, tapping into those childhood fears that often linger into adulthood. Fears originate in our past. Many say early childhood traumas shape the rest of our lives. These traumas become subconscious impulses, often linked to survival instincts, what we might call animal instincts, or Pluto mind. And I digress, back into last weekend, where many of us were visualizing our futures, setting up 5-year plans and 10-year goals. We opened ourselves up to the past, reaching out for forgiveness and offering moments of prayer. Now, this weekend, the fruits of our efforts are ripening. You know what they say, it's always quietest before the storm. Speaking of storms, this past Tuesday, November 5th, we had an election here in the US. Maybe this bucolic theme is speaking to that longing for the simpler time before the election results, before the noise. Who knows? All I know is Ceres is on her way to meet Pluto in Capricorn. And I also know that Jupiter is over there in Gemini, giving an inconjunct connection to Ceres throughout this weekend and throughout the nodal reverse. Jupiter's feeling a little lost in the woods right now, wandering through Gemini backwards. When Jupiter's in Gemini, he's weaker, more impressionable. And inconjunct aspects, they're tricky. It's like having an itch you just can't scratch, or a cricket chirping somewhere in your room when you're trying to sleep. Ceres and Jupiter may not be in each other's direct line of sight, but they're still cosmically linked. And yes, they're technically siblings, and Zeus is Persephone's father. But how do Ceres and Jupiter tie into the astrology of this weekend? I think this is our chance to focus on Persephone. She represents spring, new life, and innocence. We can dwell on the darker side of bucolic, or we could turn our attention to the budding daffodil, one of the first signs of spring. Hopefully you've been tending your soil, because this weekend you might just find yourself in a pastoral wonderland. And who knows, there might even be clowns. Whether you find them funny or terrifying, that's up to you and all the seeds you planted last weekend. So, as we move through the weekend's cosmic weather, take a moment to reflect on the seeds you have sown. Whether you're navigating the underworld with Ceres and Pluto or basking in the light of Persephone's springtime energy, it's clear that this weekend invites both introspection and action. Mars in Leo may tempt us to stir the pot, but it's up to us to decide what we'll nurture and what we'll let go. As you pick the fruits of your efforts, be mindful of what's ripe and ready, and don't be afraid to discard what's past its prime. Remember, the cosmos is always giving us chances to grow, learn, and refine. So enjoy the pastoral wonderland of your dreams, or face those scary clowns and make them funny. Whatever comes your way, until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next one, next weekend. This is Liz Grace, Please only take what resonates with you and leave all the rest behind. I am sending you so much love. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe if you are not already, and I look forward to seeing you next weekend. Toodles.